Today, we're making giant beef ribs at the original Black's Barbecue. I'm Barrett Black, the original Black's Barbecue, and you're gonna learn how to make these perfectly at your own home. I'm gonna be cooking on this one-of-one, the only place it exists, beautiful brick smoker my grandfather built in the late 1940s. But honestly, the smoker doesn't matter. It's about what you know and what you do with what you have that matters to make the best barbecue you possibly can. So when it comes to beef ribs, first you gotta choose the right rack of beef ribs, but there's a lot of flexibility there. I chose this rack because it's typical of what you would normally see in a grocery store. We buy beef ribs by the pallet, by the truckload, of course, and so we get all different kinds, and I picked one that's a little bit ugly, so to speak. Occasionally you'll get one with a nice, beautiful, solid fat cap, but that's pretty rare, a diamond in the rough, so to speak. It doesn't really matter when it comes to beef ribs, because what we love about giant beef ribs is this intramuscular fat right here. This marbling, that is what makes a steak excellent. That's what makes brisket excellent. That's what makes giant beef ribs excellent. Fat cap on top is important when it comes to cooking and for bark development and flavor, but not as much as all this marbling in here. The next thing that we're gonna do after we pick this beautiful beef rib, we've picked one that's got a nice solid membrane on the back. It's got a little bit of gash in it, but no big deal. A lot of people wanna trim the beef ribs. Trimming the beef ribs, in our opinion, is not necessary unless there's just something hanging off, a little nugget of meat about to fall off that's loose or a super sharp corner. We're not touching it. Fat on top is gonna melt and render away. Not completely, but just enough to be just perfect. It's gonna baste itself, it's gonna marinate itself, it's gonna absorb a ton of smoke flavor and the salt and the pepper that we put on it as well. Membrane on the back, that is another just blanket, another protection, another cozy layer just to protect it, to flavor it, to hold in all your friends that you want, those little globules of fat. By removing, if you were to remove that membrane off the back or score it or anything, you're just poking holes in your bucket of flavor. All that's gonna drain out and be just a giant sieve of flavor just draining into the bottom of your smoker, giving you more work, more things to clean up that you don't want, and just lack of flavor. The silver skin that you see right here, you'll hear a lot of people say, oh, you gotta trim the silver skin. And it just kind of breaks my heart because as they're trimming it, it's impossible to get just the silver skin, or you gotta be a surgeon to get that off and you're gonna waste a ton of time. Or while you're doing it, you're gonna take some of that beautiful red meat with it. This is gonna cook for 6 to 8 hours. That silver skin has no chance of survival in a smoker for 6 to 8 hours. It's gonna crisp up, it's gonna dry up, it's gonna go away, you won't even know it's there. It's actually gonna help insulate the beef rib a little bit. It's gonna be like a little blanket. It's gonna hold all those juices nice and tight in there, keep everybody cozy. My mouth is watering just thinking about it because I can see the end in mind of what that juicy, beautiful beef rib's gonna be. So at Black's Barbecue, we've been doing things the old-fashioned way since 1932. Before it was called old-fashioned, that was just called barbecue. It's salt and pepper. It's table salt and black pepper. And we have a little bit of red pepper in here just for a little bit of kick, but that's not a major factor in the flavor. The type of salt that we use is very important. It's table salt. And what's very common today is kosher salt. That's a very hip, trendy thing that chefs use and a lot of barbecue folks are using nowadays. But we are using table salt because, one, that's what my great-grandfather used, my grandfather used, because that's all that was available to them. I never had the chance to ask him directly, but the more research that I've done, the more experience I've had, as the salt sits on the beef rib, it's gonna draw out some of that moisture from the beef rib, which sounds bad, but then there's an imbalance there, and that meat is then gonna draw that moisture back into it. It's gonna season the meat from within, so you're gonna have a seasoned bite completely throughout the meat column. Inside and out, you're gonna have seasoning, not just sitting on top. Kosher salt, the crystal sizes vary wildly, and so some parts might be a little bit more salty than others. It might not completely dissolve. And so table salt is definitely the way to go. And we're just gonna slide it around and just make sure it gets a nice uniform layer on there, nothing too thick. Because in Texas barbecue, bark development does not come from the rub. The bark that gets formed on this, the dark outer crust that you're gonna see, is not because of the rub we put on it, it's because of the smoke, the wood. So when it comes to the amount of seasoning, I'm just looking to get a nice even layer on here, just a nice one salt crystal high. I don't want anything piled together, any salty pockets. I don't want it completely covered in salt, but just a nice even layer. So I sprinkle it on there as evenly as I can, and then I rub it around to spread it to where it distributes evenly, but then also to get it into the meat fibers as well. I like to season even the bottom, the membrane, even though it's not getting into the meat, it will help dry out that membrane a little bit so it can crisp up a little bit easier and add it a little bit more flavor. I like to let these rest at least overnight because of what we talked about. We want these salt crystals to dissolve into the meat. As it sits overnight, the moisture from the meat is going to get drawn out, dissolve the salt, and get sucked back in, seasoning it deeply, tenderizing it, making some chemical changes that I know just a little bit about. I'm not an expert in that, but they tell me, it changes the structure of the molecules to where the molecules of the meat, the proteins, actually hold on to more moisture because of what the salt is doing to the structure and everything. So all I know is it tastes really good. It works. We've been doing it for many, many decades, and I'm ready to get this on the smoker. All right, now we're finally ready for the smoker. Ideally, in a perfect world, you're gonna let these rest in your refrigerator for 12 to 24 hours so that way that salt dissolves, penetrates, seasons, tenderizes your meat before it goes onto the smoker. Not absolutely necessary, but just another step in the journey to get to those life-changing beef ribs that you're after. So we've got our smoker at 275 degrees. The smoker my grandfather built in the 1940s. That's what it runs all the time, every day, all day long. It is an offset smoker where the fire's at one end and then the cook chamber is at the other end. Beef ribs can be cooked hotter, which is a beautiful part of it. And actually, we like the flavor of it cooked a little bit hotter. So the main part is about 275. This part might be about 300. Reason we can do that is because it has those 3 bones on the bottom and that membrane and all the marbling. It's going to insulate itself. It's going to cook it nice and evenly and just be super tasty. My mouth is watering already. So obviously, this is a one-of-one type of smoker. Let us know in the comments below what kind of smoker you have. If you have any questions about what temperature to put on, we'll do our best to help you out. 275 is a little high for a lot of smokers, so maybe start out at 225 if you're unsure and worried about burning or crisping anything up. But in about that range, you're off to a great start. So we'll let these cook, and we'll talk about what the next steps. The main thing you need to concern yourself with during this cook is temperature control of your smoker. If you've got a wood-fired smoker, you have to manage that. You need to be checking at least every 30 minutes. Make sure that you have enough logs, not too many logs, monitoring your temperature, make sure it never gets too high or too low, because you want that nice, even blanket of heat just wrapping around, surrounding that beef rib, cooking it, caressing it, cuddling it, and helping it along to that perfect state of tenderness and smoky goodness, that the journey that we're on. That's where we want. That's the finish line. Some other things to consider is wrapping. That's a very popular thing. You have a couple different options to wrap it. There's butcher paper and there's foil. Wrapping your meat in foil, that will just basically close it up, seal it up super tight, capture all that steam, and it will cook faster because it's going to capture all that heat inside of there. It's not going to allow the evaporation to happen, and it's going to cook really fast, but you're risking making pot roast, basically, or braise. Butcher paper is another great option if you're trying to just limit the smoke amount on there. It allows for evaporation, doesn't steam the meat, but also protects it from absorbing any more smoke. But this is not something we use at Black's Barbecue, but there's a lot of good options for you at home. As you're monitoring it, you don't want to be looking too much. You don't want to be opening your smoker too often, because if you're looking, you ain't cooking. But you do need to check it maybe about every hour, hour and a half or so. And if you notice certain corners, certain parts are getting a little too dry, a little too crispy, that's where the spritz would come in. We don't spritz here for flavor or anything like that. It's not something that's necessary in our process. But if you're wanting to slow down that cooking process on the outside to make sure it gets a nice, even cook, and throughout, spritzing with a little bit of vinegar won't hurt it. It'll just basically add an evaporative layer to the outside. All right. While that rack finishes cooking, I went ahead and grabbed a fully done rack from the front. I borrowed it from our cutters up front, told them, don't worry, it'll be back for you. Just be patient with me. But got this beautiful rack of beef ribs that has already been fully cooked, checked for probe tenderness, and ready to be served. But there were a lot of steps to get to that point. As it cooked, as you can see, it was that solid wall of meat from bone to bone, but as it cooks, it shrunk pretty significantly. So as you're planning your party, figuring out how much food do you need, per person, just realize that beef ribs will shrink about 20-30%. We were looking for, as it was cooking, to see if it was done, was that shrinkage, was that showing that bone exposure? And then we're also checking for probe tenderness. And so what that means is my grandfather, he always had nowhere close to as fancy thermometer as this one. This one's too fancy for him. He would have basically a broken analog thermometer that all he would use it for is check for tenderness. He just push it in, pull it out, and just feel. And he'd always teach me, how to hold it with my fingers, real loose like this, not really grab it, and just feel, does it go in and out smooth? Does it feel like it's going in and out of butter? Or does it feel rubbery? Does it have any resistance? Does it grab onto that probe? And if it is grabbing, it does feel rubbery, that means you have not broken down the connective tissue enough yet. So all that collagen and connective tissue hasn't broken down to the delicious fatty goodness that we all love and enjoy when it comes to beef ribs. This one is perfectly probe tender. It goes in and out just like butter. If you need to be scientific about it, that usually happens around 200, 205 degrees internally. So if you really want to check the temperature, that's usually about where that starts to happen. But every piece of meat's different. You still need it to get to be probe tender, because your guests, or you don't care what the number said on the thermometer, you care how does it feel when I'm taking a bite. It's absolutely beautiful. Even the bottom, kind of that ugly delicious, that ugly beautiful look down here with the membrane. You see how it captured and held on to a lot of the fat in these pockets right here. It's nice and crispy. You can kind of hear it right there. And that's exactly what we're wanting from there. It's holding the bones together, held the rack together. It kept everybody nice and happy together, and the fat, keeping everything juicy and flavorful. And this is just an absolutely perfect rack of beef ribs. Once it was done, we pulled it off the smoker. We did have to wait another about an hour, hour and a half or so, because there's a lot of energy, a lot of heat going on inside of here. The juices are just ready just to burst out of there. And so at that 200 degrees, you need to bring it out of the smoker, let it rest, bring it down to at least 140, 150 degrees to let all those natural juices naturally redistribute around the meat fibers. So that way when you slice into it, all that juice doesn't just pour out on your cutting board. When it comes to slicing giant beef ribs, there's not a lot to it. You want to make sure that the meat side is up so you protect that beautiful bark that you spent so long creating in the blanket of post oak smoke. You want a nice sharp knife. Doesn't have to be this long. It's just what I like to use. And you just find your line between those bones. It's nice and wide between this end of the bones, and then it gets a lot thinner and more narrow over here, but just line up your knife and just be nice and gentle with it. It should be nice and tender. Just make your way through nice and slowly. Let's see, make your fingers safe. I'm finding that bone, taking my time. Get that crackle of the membrane. And would you look at that? Look at all that juicy marbling. We don't have a lot of juices flowing out because we had a nice long rest on here. Our membrane is nice and juicy. It's got a lot of fat still up under there. That's gonna flavor a lot of things. Now the way I like to eat it, just grab one end here and here and just dig in. Oh my God. That is no joke. I had a lot of beef ribs, but still, every time it hits me. If you learned something today, give us a like and a subscribe. We got a lot more content coming. Let us know about your beef rib journey in the comments below. We'll help you out any way we can. And come see us at Black's Barbecue. We'll do it for you every single day.